Guys, this is a special edition of Discuss It with Deante. I have no guest today, but as you know, I've been away for a few weeks, been on hiatus, and a lot of that was because I wanted to get my first online course up and running. And it's been a long time coming. It's called Publish Your Pain. Anyone that follows me or Dirty Truth Publishing have heard of that. And I just want to give you guys an update about what I've been kind of experiencing and dealing with. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to be able to talk to you guys, but I didn't want you guys to go another week without hearing from me in this capacity. Like I said, this is a very unusual episode of Discuss It with Deante, but there's a lot of great things coming down the pike. So what I will tell you is this, is that summer is upon us, even though there's still about 3 weeks from now before summer gets here, a little bit less than 3 weeks, but the weather is definitely rather warm. Let's just put it that way. So first and foremost, the last episode, or shall I say the most recent episode, was released on May 12th. And so this is about 3 weeks after that. And so what I did the very next day was I did the Wayne Dawson book tour in Shaker Heights. And that was a great, great experience. Got a chance to be around the public, even though I didn't really like the way that the library organized it, because I always work in conjunction with the libraries or whatever place that we're going to do the book signings at. And I always tell them, look, these are the specifications we need. And they kind of dropped the ball on a couple things because the PR team that I had been working with since January apparently are not there anymore. So left a lot of things to chance, but it was still a nice experience just being around the fans of Wayne and being able to really just kind of fellowship with the people there. That was great. And then we had Mother's Day, which was the following day. And I was really grateful that my mom showed up and, at church. So I go to Pastor Dawson's church, and that was a really wonderful experience that we sat there and I did something nice for my girlfriend Billy, who is, I call her my queen. She's my queen, and my mom, who's also a queen. And I spent time with my mom after church. We were just hanging out, being silly, talking, which is what I love to do, is just talk about old times and laugh and just have great conversation, which is what we did. And when I left her, then I went, came home and was hanging out with Miss Billy Cup, my Billy Cup. And I can't take credit for that nickname because my mom called her Billy Cup, and then she forgot that she said it just a couple days later. So I said, I like that. Billy Cup, my Billy Cup. So that was all awesome stuff. And then I had to attend Pastor Wayne's anniversary along with Miss Laverne. And that was about a week after Mother's Day. And it was an awesome experience because it was a celebration of his 5 years as a full-time pastor at Grace Tabernacle Baptist Church. And if you count his 1 year interim, now we're talking 6 years. But I'm really impressed by that because Wayne will be the first to tell you that in his early years, no one could have foresaw him being in this capacity because, as he says, that he was living a life that wasn't not exactly pristine. So that was great to see that, and just to see the love that Pastor and First Lady Dawson received. I was grateful to be a part of that, just in some small way. And then after that, it was the release of Publish Your Pain. Like I mentioned, my very first digital course.
No matter who you are, your story is important. It's important because it will help others. It's important because you were created on purpose for a purpose.
I thought that I was an individual that could not be loved and no one would love me because of domestic violence. I don't know, to tell you the truth, if I want to talk about the whole domestic violence openly.
The more transparent you are, the more you're going to connect with your readers.
You have a way, Deante, of bringing the cream to the top.
You did a good job, man. You actually made my life interesting. You made a guy whose life is really boring Interesting. And I appreciate that. That takes talent. Like I told you, I don't have much of a story to tell, but you made it interesting.
Get your story told. Publish your pain.
And it's about book writing, but not just about writing a book in general, about taking your story, especially the ugly parts of it, your pain, as it were, and extrapolating that into something that's great and useful for other people and is also going to be very healing to yourself. More on that later. So that came out on May 26th, which is about a week ago. And then I had something that I would say has been the most monumental thing probably of the year so far. I went to something called the Career Expo at John Hay High School. And these kids are really range in age from about 15 to 18, 14, I should say, 14 to 18. And it was such an eye-opening experience because back in February, I had been invited to be a presenter at this annual event that they have called Man Up. And basically it's for young men who are in middle school, high school, maybe some elementary school. They told me it would be fourth grader through 12th grade. And that's pretty much the crowd. And I talked to them back in February, and I was so disillusioned by the experience because they were not listening. They were doing very unruly things, airdropping pictures of their private parts and throwing up gang signs in the pictures that I took. And they were just talking over me the entire time. Again, this was Man Up back in February, and I did not like that. I felt like my audience is mostly women, and especially young people. I feel like I have the capacity to really be able to educate them and give them some good pearls of wisdom, because I feel like that we are, connected in a sense, because I still feel a lot of the things that I went through when I was during those ages, living through those ages. So I was disillusioned. I said, yeah, I'm not trying to talk to people that don't want to listen. I don't want to twist someone's arm to listen. Again, this was in February, but fast forward to the experience at John Hay High School Career Expo, which was just a week ago now. And I had some incredible conversations with the young people there. And these people were typically 15, 16 years old that I talked to. And it really changed my life in so many ways. Just in the 3 hours that I was there, I was supposed to be a vendor and a presenter at the same time, but of course that could not work. And so I ended up just being a vendor. But these young people, with it being a career expo, they were going up to each person's table or each business's table to discuss it with them. And when they came over to my table, they were curious about the titles of my book, the titles of my books, because my books are all very titillating with the titles, especially the first one, which is, of course, the infamous FUCK, Your Insecurities. And the type of things that I was told, the type of feedback that I was given about my books was fine. But what was more profound was the young people expressing to me the difficulties and challenges that they face as young people. And I told them, I said, I hate this about grownups, is that grownups, especially parents, they always want to tell someone that's young that you have nothing to even be concerned about because being young is easy. You don't have bills to pay. I pay all the bills. You don't do anything. You just got to go to school and get good grades. And I'm very sensitive to adults saying that, because even though that I am, in terms of age, I'm an adult, I still feel as though I still have a connectedness with the mindset and the mentality of young people, because I know how much it really bothered me when I was that age, and adults would tell me that, oh, you don't have any problems, you don't have any issues. But it is hard work being a teenager, because your life, your mind, your body, everything is going through such a transitional period, a bigger transitional period than you had ever experienced consciously to that point. And it's very difficult. And there's pressures on you that, quite frankly, adults are not facing for the most part, because you got to deal with your fellow classmates. You have to deal with nowadays social media and the pressures of that, celebrity culture and how it trickles down into the schools and into the general population. And especially when you're young and you have to measure up to what social media says you should be, what your peers have. And let's face it, all of us that can remember being young and back in school, in high school, middle school, the people that you go to school with, they're not always forthcoming about what their life is like. So they give you a very, very, how can I say it? A very misleading perspective of what their life is. There was a kid that when I went to fourth grade, he always told me that his mom let him stay up as late as he wanted. He can go to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning if he wanted to. And I believed him because he sounded so convincing. But when they had parent teacher conference, and then I saw his mom, and I walked over to her and I said, "It's so amazing that you let him stay up so late. How, why do you let him do that?" And meanwhile, he's like pushing me away, trying to get me not to ask her that. And then his mom said, "What are you talking about? He's in bed by 9 o'clock." And I just was laughing, and he was so embarrassed. So that was an example of how our classmates, they always give us a different version of what their life actually is. But you can better believe that everybody, even the people that are the big shots in school, their life is not what they illustrated to be to us. And I remember, especially this young man, I'll never forget him. He told me so much about his life and how his father calls him nigga all the time, but he never hears the word love or the phrase, I love you, but he hears nigga all the time. And whenever he tries to talk to his father about how he's feeling, he himself is feeling, his father always wants to just tell him about himself and tell him what he's doing wrong. And it just really bothers me because we all feel so much hurt. And this is where anxiety and depression comes into play. Anxiety, depression, it can turn into suicide, insecurities, all these different things come into play. And as parents, we have a greater responsibility to be more of a sounding board for these young people. I have 2 daughters. And did I get everything right? No, I got most things wrong. But one thing I can say is that because of my experiences when I was younger and being told that stay in a child's place and that what I think doesn't matter because they pay the bills, you can't take that kind of approach, especially now. And then you hear grown people say, well, my kids, I'm going to discipline them the way that I was disciplined. In my mother's house, she couldn't do this. And these are people who grew up in, the 70s or the 80s, and then sometimes the 50s, And what I say, what I like to say to them, and I'll say it from now on whenever I'm talking to other adults, I'll say, listen, I understand the whole mindset that you want to get the ultimate respect from your kids, but being what amounts to being a bully or being disrespectful to them just because you feel like they're your property and you own them, that's not the way to do it. Also, let's just say you grew up in the 80s or the 70s. Well, there's a whole lot of things that used to be the status quo in the 70s and the 80s and every other decade, but it's not now. Back then, pretty much everybody had a rotary telephone and probably had a VCR. Nobody had a flat screen TV because they weren't out. Nobody had the internet because it wasn't out for public consumption. My point is that if those things have evolved over time, why can't the way that you handle and parent your children, or the way that you see them, or the respect that you give them? Yes, a child should always respect their parents, but when I say always, I mean always in the sense of if it's being given back to them. Because if you expect someone, even your child, to treat you a different way than you treat them, then you're just asking for trouble. Because more than anything, the child, before they are your child, they are a human being first, and then your child. And make sure that you understand the difference between being a parent and being their owner, because you're never their owner. And that's why I make it a point to not talk to my daughter like that, or my other daughter. And it's just one of those things that we have to learn to work on, because I'm more concerned with what this does to the young people, to the young mind that feel like they can't get any type of alliance with the people that should care about them the most, which is the people under their roof. And they're going to seek things in the streets, which is dumb. Now, this aligns so much with Publish Your Pain, because these young people, I was just blown away because they were so different from the kids at Man Up. They were telling me how they felt. The one girl told me about how she has an older sister and her parents are always talking about her older sister because she's successful, and they hold her, the younger sister, to that standard. And she's telling them, well, that's her and this is me. I don't want to do what she does. But they, of course, are trying to live her life for her. And that's just dead wrong. I'm sorry. Because us as parents, we feel like we're so much in power when we're, 30 years old or 25 years old, parenting our kids or telling them what to do, or 40 years old, telling our teenagers, you better do this. But what happens when we're 70 years old, if we get to that point and we can barely do things for ourselves, and now the kid has to be the one to make decisions and do things or not do things and treat us a good way or bad way? And so it just like the expression goes, there is no fun when the rabbits got the gun. When the rabbits got the gun, all that excitement and all that confidence tends to fade away. So I think about that. It's not about your ego. It's about making sure that these young people are not emotionally damaged, because so much of us carry emotional baggage, emotional trauma with us all the time. And we keep it bottled up because we often feel like there is no person to listen. Like I continuously say, we all just want to be heard. Every one of us, even mass murderers. You don't think Charles Manson wanted to be heard? You didn't think that Ariel Castro wanted to be heard? You didn't think that O.J. Simpson wanted to be heard, or Jeffrey Dahmer? I know these names sounds like the worst people in the history of people because their names are attached to devastating things, criminal things. But remember, before they did what they did, they were still just regular people like you and I who just wanted to be heard. Their tactics were dead wrong, but they still deserve to be heard about whatever it was that led them to that. Like I said, mental health is a mother. And I ain't talking about the person that birthed you either. It's a mother. And from what they tell me, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. Not that I'm some type of psychologist or therapist, but I'm just saying that has crossed my mind a whole lot. And, to be honest with you, I've had, and people would be surprised about this, but when I was going through school, I had a lot of things that bothered me. So that's why I empathize with these young people. And that's why you see me talk about this ad nauseum. This book that's why this is the name of my first book, FUCK Your Insecurities, because it was all about expressing what had happened with me and all that. I still have insecurities. I'm still very self-conscious, but I still have a whole lot of self-belief at the same time. There was a time when a woman told me that she told me that I'm an egotistical maniac with an inferiority complex. And I thought that was really interesting. And it's very interesting. But with that being said, sometimes every now and then I'll have moments where I feel like I'm less than, where I feel like I'm a loser, I'm a nobody, and I kind of look down on myself. But those things are very sporadic and few and far between. And shout out to my Billy Cup, my girlfriend, for really lifted me out of the doldrums. And then my mom is awesome as well. And Billy being in the household with me, she really, really helps me with those things. And it's why I look at it like I want to use whatever I go through and grow through to lift other people up, because that's when it becomes worth it to have gone through those things. So that's just kind of the bottom line of that. Speaking of my girlfriend, Billy, we had date night in Geneva on the Lake, which is something that I've been going to Geneva on the Lake for the past 14 years. In the past 3 years, I've gone, with her in tow. And I've been very excited about that and very happy that we've had a great time. And it was just a blast. You really couldn't ask for anything more. And then, of course, Memorial Day, she had organized a cookout, her and her grandkids and her daughter and daughter's husband. It was all awesome stuff, just that togetherness. And I also got to see my mom on. And then I saw her 2 days later, and we laughed, we talked, we drank, we listened to music, we laughed some more, we talked business. It's just fun to be able to do that. I'm very lucky and very blessed to have my mom, and more so, I'm even more blessed and lucky to have the type of mom that I have. And so I'm really grateful for that. So those types of positives in my life it like minimizes whatever might be considered a negative, and it ends up being a net positive overall. And then I also was able to interview the great Wayne Dawson for this show that you're watching right now, and he will be on an episode very soon. Official episodes and guests will resume next week with the June 9th episode of Discuss It with Deante. And I'm very excited about that. But what I want to leave you guys with is just to understand that you all have a story that's worth telling. You don't have to take my course, although it would be great if you did, because if you took my course, then you're going to learn how to not only tell your story, but to dig deep and pull the toughest parts of your story out, because that's going to give you connectedness with other people. You're going to establish a connection like no other when people feel like you're talking just to them. And so if you want to check out the course, it's at dirtytruthpublishing.com, and it's called Publish Your Pain: How to Write Your Story, Start Healing, and Help Others. That's the gist of it. But a lot of exciting things is going on. Have a busy weekend, and I want you guys to know I ain't forgot about you. I love you, and tell your story.